Now, what I write in the book about the revolt is that the revolt is mainly a sentiment. It's a political sentiment. And the sentiment is as such. People are revolting because they think that our structures are corrupt, hollow, incompatible to the challenges of our world. And they are revolting. It's not all of the people. It's not the majority of the people. But sometimes it's the sections of society that make the decisions. Maybe it's because the way of the electoral system is built in the United States. So it happened to be in Pennsylvania and Wisconsin and all these blue states that turned red. In the end, when we look at this, we need to remember that we can harness the power of the revolt, and we can harness it into a real change, into progressive change. And if we won't do that, the revolt will turn into a full-scale uprising against progress and against the values of enlightenment. And actually, it has already begun.
That is a failure of multiple social institutions, simultaneous failure of multiple social institutions. And they're failing in two respects. On one side, they're contributing to the crises, the multiple crises that we're facing. And on the other side, in their current form, they're incapable of resolving those crises. So our contention then is that we need to reimagine from the ground up all of these fundamental social institutions. And again, going back to Nadav's idea about failure of globalization, I think this can also be thought of as a failure of the norms and values and rules that govern all of these social institutions. It's kind of, we think of this almost as in terms of a landscape of social values, landscape of rules and norms. And this landscape, which could be called industrial modernity or post-modernity, whatever we like to call it, this landscape is actually no longer fit for purpose. Necessary implications and interventions that are needed to put these right. And they are absolutely fundamentally structural interventions that are needed. And I think that makes it difficult in terms of the conference when looking at individual firms and individual actions. How can firms and individuals make a difference in a system that is so inherently structurally flawed? And again, that's maybe something we can bring up in the discussion.
Imagine that what you do as a job every day does not even nourish or sustain you in your own life. Isn't that just a little bit off? And it's this aspect, thinking about this, that I think about what Nadav stimulated us with either integrate or revolt. And so I propose this idea that farmers are at the table of thinking about genetic varieties which enter their continent. Often we think this is the job of organizations that Nadav and Ian has talked about, global organizations and multinational institutions. No, it's the farmers, because they're the ones doing the work. And if we would like to consider Nadav's point about revolt or integrate, I think these are some concrete examples of what that could mean. Secondly, I'd like to propose that innovation isn't necessarily a drone or a high-tech solution. What if I told you that a goat is potentially one of the most interesting innovations we could see in global food system right now? In the past, we have done excessive chemicals. We've considered machinery. We've considered child labor, slave labor, migrant labor, all of these solutions to do this very laborious task of getting diseased plant and material out of farms. But there are simpler solutions which lend themselves to abundance and growth in that area. A goat, a simple goat. Goats love these pieces of plants. They love these fruits. They can live happily inside the same farm. I propose that sometimes we are overthinking solutions beyond the innovations that exist inherently in solutions. We underestimate what these solutions can do with their positive knock-on effects. Brings me to my final point. Why are we output focused and not outcome? When we look at outcomes and not outputs, We don't measure the value of my cacao farm by how many tons we're producing. We measure it by a system of regenerative agriculture that we've put in. Let us look to the reminders of our day as we consider what we're doing in our humanistic management responses. Please consider what you're funding, and not necessarily as an individual. I think we all find it quite relatively easy to make choices as individuals at the moment, especially for those of us who've turned up to join this sort of a discussion. Please think about what you're funding via your work and your jobs. Where is your money being invested? Who are you buying from? All the tiny things around us. I think these are the places we have to look first. And you know, a really simple way to do it is to look at our tax statements at the end of the year, pick the top 5 areas, top 5 places we're really spending our money. And let's look at those. Is it our heating? Is it the rent for our organizations? Is it our people that are working with us? Please follow the money for the first big places where you can make a direct and meaningful change.
We live in an age of innovation, and that innovation should be at the core of economics. And so I would say the call for the Humanistic Management Network is to lead the charge for rethinking innovation. That includes the type of things that Alyssa has been talking about. I love the idea of a goat being an innovation. That innovation just isn't about the products. It isn't just about innovating for new products. It's innovation that also changes deeply the context within which innovation is happening. So that's my call to the network.
We need to focus, I think, on creating, harboring, giving birth to a story that can lead people into actual change, and not focus so much on planning the radical change that we want to happen in the world. Because first of all, we basically know what it is. And secondly, that's not our obstacle here. Our obstacle is really convincing people. And when you understand that it's not about being right all the time. It's not about being just. It's not being spot on. It's not about hitting the target with 100%. It's about gaining enough for 70, 75%. Then you start to be focusing on real change and not only on just being in your echo chamber in which everybody agrees with you. And I think this is right now the most important thing. And I want to thank you for giving me the opportunity to be here today, sort of here.